Hi everyone, I'm Megan Roeder with O'Hare Wealth Management. On behalf of the entire team, I want to welcome you to our call today. We're thrilled to be hosting a special guest speaker, Dan Conti with Voya Investment Management. Thanks for being here today, Dan.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. Thank you to everybody on the O'Hare team for including me today. So excited to do this webinar for you all and talk a little bit about the importance of college savings, give you a little background info on the 529 plan, and hopefully answer the questions that clients are asking you on a pretty regular basis.
Absolutely.
All
Well,
right.
we appreciate you being here. You might recognize Dan. He's been a very, very powerful resource for our team for many years now. So you've probably seen his face before, and it won't be the last time. So he's a wealth of knowledge on many different subjects, but 529s is one of them. So we're happy to have him here, go through some strategies as well as some basics and some, what's new in the world of 529s. So thanks again, Dan.
Great. Let's get
Take it
started.
from here.
All right, folks. So let's get started today. We're going to be talking about a few different things with the 529 plans and the importance of saving for college. So to get started, we're going to be talking about the importance of saving for college, some basics of the 529 plan, and then hopefully helping you choose the right 529 plan and some important things to look for. So let's just talk about the importance of saving for college. Right now, and prior to working for Voya as a 529 specialist, I spent many years as well as a financial advisor. And one of the common things that I would see is families not saving for college very efficiently. We're still seeing more than 40% of all tuition costs and associated costs being paid for with cash and money markets and savings and CDs. And that's not the most efficient way to do it. You're leaving out possible tax deductions, tax deferred growth, and other benefits that a different savings vehicle might offer you. And I'm happy to say that this number has grown, where 529 college savings plans are the second most commonly used way of paying for education. 529s were created more than 20 years ago by the IRS to be the most efficient way to pay for a child's education. And we see people still using their 401k, taking loans out of that, their IRA, their traditional, their Roth IRAs, which are retirement vehicles to pay for a child's education. Now, those were created to save for retirement. 529s were created to save for college. So we want to use each vehicle in the respective way. And we're going to talk about the benefits of 529s in the next few slides. We know college is very, very expensive. I, in fact, am paying those tuition bills right now. My stepdaughter is 20. She's in her second year of lacrosse, and I'll be writing a check for that, or using my 529, I should say, to pay for that in the next couple of weeks for her fall semester. So right now, we have lots of folks that are in Wisconsin. A year at Wisconsin now is north of $26,000, and you can see on the slide the cost of some of the other schools out there. And NYU and MIT, schools that are north of $70,000. Marquette University here in Wisconsin, north of $50,000 at full sticker price. So college, like retirement, is a long-term commitment to saving that needs to really be planned for in advance. Not many families have the ability to just write a check or make a withdrawal for those large lump sums. Like a retirement plan, you need to create an education savings plan as well. And the cost of college, you've probably heard headlines of how much it has increased over the years. The cost of college has grown at a larger rate of inflation than inflation across the rest of the country for a typical basket of goods. In fact, the fun statistic, and then things have changed with inflation over the last couple of years, if you went back to 1990 to today, 2024, the cost of a gallon of milk, had it grown at the same inflation as college tuition, you'd be spending north of $15 for a gallon of milk, which would be wild to go to the grocery store and spend $15 for your milk. So imagine if cost of college grows at a kind of traditional rate of inflation of about 3%, that $28,000 that it costs to go to Wisconsin right now, 18 years from now will be north of $42,000 a year. That's $171,000 over 4 years. And many students don't finish in 4 years. They're on a 4.5 or a 5-year plan, and many students go beyond their traditional 4-year degree, and there's grad school costs. Now imagine if they go to a private school like a New York University, NYU, In 18 years, that's north of $80,000 per year, more than $325,000 over 4 years. That is a large, large sum of money that, again, you need to start planning for in the early stages of that child's life. So let's talk about some of the basics of 529 plans and how these can be effectively used to hit that savings goal that your child and you and your family might have. So some of the commonly asked questions and concerns that we get on a daily basis, myself and the O'Hare team on the 529 plan, is one, can 529 plans only be established in your state of residence? Meaning here in Wisconsin, can we only use the Wisconsin 529 plan? And that is not true. You can use a 529 plan from any state. Now, you'll want to take a look at the state that you reside in and the possible tax benefits that that state offers, and that'll kind of dictate which plan you want to use. So, our neighbors to the south in Illinois that offer a state tax deduction for using the Illinois plan will want to use the plan that's offered by the state of Illinois. If you live in Texas or Florida, a state with no state income tax, you'll want to use the best 529 plan offered that hits your goals and some other features of that specific plan. So make sure you work with your advisor and figure out which plan makes sense for you. Can the beneficiary only attend a school in the state that sponsors the 529 plan? No, you can use the 529 plan at any accredited school across the country, including many schools abroad. So just because you use the Wisconsin 529 plan, you don't have to go to a UW school, you don't have to go be a Badger, you don't have to go to Marquette, you don't have to go to a Parkside, you can go to any school across the country. Is the owner the only person eligible to contribute to the 529 plan? No. This is fantastic that anybody can contribute to anybody's 529 plan out there and possibly receive a tax benefit depending on the plan that's used. So anybody that's watching this call would be able to make a contribution to my stepdaughter's 529 plan, to my son's 529 plan. You can make a contribution to anybody's 529 plan out there. It's not restricted just to the owner. Is the beneficiary limited to only one 529 plan? No. A beneficiary can have multiple 529 plans with multiple owners. And we're going to talk about this in a couple of slides on why it might make sense for a beneficiary to have multiple 529 plans. You know, mom and dad might want to own one, grandma and grandpa might want to own one, and we'll talk about why that is in a few slides. And what if the beneficiary doesn't go to college? Is the money lost? No, absolutely not. This is one of the great things about 529 plans is that the owner always has complete control over the assets. They can do whatever they want. They can change the beneficiary anytime they want. They could possibly pull those assets back for personal needs, and they might have to pay some tax on the withdrawal, but you always have complete control over the assets. And who owns the funds? Does that change when the beneficiary goes to the college? Kind of in the same vein, the owner always has complete control over the assets. Once the child goes to school or turns 18 or 21, age of majority, it doesn't matter. The owner always has complete control, and the owner is the only one that can authorize a withdrawal for those funds to be dispersed. So, what if the money in the 529 plan is not used? We're going to talk about that in a few slides. Again, the money is not lost. You can change beneficiaries. You can take it out for personal reasons. There's a lot of uses for the 529 plan beyond just college savings. And then, are there any benefits to using a 529 plan beyond saving for college? 529 plans have gotten better every single year. They have expanded the uses. They've expanded the amounts. So yes, absolutely, there's some benefits for 529 plans beyond just the traditional cost of college. Now, how much can you contribute to 529 plans? One of the great things about these is that you can get relatively large dollar amounts into a 529 plan. And they follow what's called federal annual gifting limits. So you can make a gift of up to $18,000 per year to a beneficiary If you're a married couple filing jointly, you can double that amount to $36,000. And 529 plans are unique. That these are the only investment vehicle that you're allowed to do up to 5 years worth of accelerated gifts. So you could go 5 times that $18,000 amount, 5 times that $36,000 amount. So you can be getting very large sums of money into this. You can also, depending on the state, get north of $500,000 into the 529 plan, where you would tap into your lifetime gifting exemption. So you can get large sums of money in early, take advantages of the tax deferred growth, and depending on the state you live in, get meaningful tax deductions on those dollars. And again, anybody can contribute to anybody's 529 plan. This example here we use more when we're talking about some estate planning practices. 529 plans are very nice that immediately when the contribution is made, the assets are immediately removed from the client's estate. So I've worked on some cases where we drop people below some federal estate tax limits just by making contributions to pretty much everybody in the family. But the benefit to the owner was, in these examples, is that they always control the assets. The owner always controls the 529 plan versus a trust where you have to follow a trust document. So what can 529 plans be used for? This is one of the most important slides here. And it's going to be the things that you traditionally think of and a couple more. So number one, tuition. Any associated fees with going to that school, all of your supplies, so your books, your backpack, your pens, pencils, notebooks, all those things you traditionally think about, on and off campus room and board. And this comes up a couple times a week for me, talking about off campus room and board. Now, every school that you look at is going to have a admissions and a cost of attendance page. We're just going to break down these costs. And however much it costs to live on campus at a particular school, you can spend dollar for dollar the amount that it costs to live on campus, off campus. So for example, if it costs hypothetically $5,000 to live in the dorm at UW-Madison, you could spend $5,000 per year to live off campus, as long as the student is enrolled half time. So taking half of the mandatory credits of a full-time student, that is then a qualified expense. Any associated equipment is a qualified expense. So technology like laptops, iPads, any software that you might need to buy, printers, is now a qualified education expense. And over the last couple of years, they've opened up the 529 plan to now be able to pay up to $10,000 per year in private K-5 through 12th grade tuition. That's per beneficiary per year. So if you send your child or your grandchild to a private grade school, middle school, high school, you can spend up to $10,000 out of the 529 plan to pay that tuition. So some states, though, do offer a tax benefit that if you do pay private school tuition out of pocket. So work with your advisor, work with a member of the O'Hare team to figure out the plan of, do we use the 529 plan or do we make an out-of-pocket expense here? How to best maximize your dollars. A very exciting change that started January 1st this year, 2024, is with Secure Act 2.0. One of the big changes was that now you can roll over monies from a 529 plan to a beneficiary's Roth IRA as long as some criteria is met. So it follows the annual Roth IRA contribution limits. So $7,000 for 2024. You can roll over up to $7,000 from beneficiary's 529 plan into their Roth IRA. But that 529 plan needs to have been open for a minimum of 15 years with that same beneficiary on it. If you were to have changed the beneficiary, that 15-year clock would have reset. Any contributions, as well as the earnings on those contributions that were made in the last 5 years, aren't eligible to be rolled over. So if the account's been open for 15 years, the monies that are more than 5 years old would be eligible to be rolled over. Number 3, just like a Roth IRA, that beneficiary does need to have earned income to be able to do the rollover. And if you do the rollover, the amount that you roll over counts towards that year's Roth IRA contribution. So you're not able to double dip and do $7,000 rollover and a $7,000 Roth contribution for 14. If you do the $7,000 rollover, that counts as that year's Roth contribution. So let me give you a little bit of an example. This is my own personal example. I actually opened up a 529 plan for myself about 13 years ago and done with college, but just figured in the future I would have a family. I was looking for another tax deduction. So went ahead and did that and put small amounts in starting 13 years ago. In 2 years, when my account that I own for myself hits 15 years, I will start rolling money out of my 529 plan into my Roth IRA. I got married coming up on 10 years, opened up a 529 plan then for my wife as well as for my stepdaughter. So in 5 years, I'll start doing that same strategy for my wife, moving it out of her 529 plan into her Roth. My stepdaughter is really why this example was created. So for years, she had talked about wanting to get out of Wisconsin and going to school somewhere warm. We were talking about some Arizona schools, some Florida schools, Tennessee was in the conversation. But she decided to go to UW La Crosse, an in-state school. And our family plan was to pay 50 to 75% of her school, depending on how her grades fell. And now that she decided to go to La Crosse, we went from a $40,000 a year type expense to $17,000, $18,000 a year type expense. So we have likely overfunded her 529 plan. So when she finishes school in 4 or 5 years and has money left over in her 529 plan and gets her first job making, let's call it $50,000, $60,000 a year, our goal, my wife and I, is for her not to come back and live in our basement and take over my office. We want her to be independent, have that first apartment, car payment, whatever it might be, and start really being an adult. But since she has those new costs now, it's going to be difficult for her to save for her retirement. Now, we'll want her to do her 401k contribution up to hopefully a company match, but she probably won't be able to contribute to her Roth IRA on her own. And we'll be able to say, we're proud of you for finishing school, being independent. We have money left over in your 529 plan. Your next 3, 4, 5 years of your Roth IRA, your mom and I, we have that taken care of for you. So that's really neat. That's why this was created, to help kids pay beyond education and really help them get on good footing for their future retirement. The other one that's really neat that I'm excited for would be my 5-year-old, my son Benjamin. So when he's 15 years old, I open up a 529 plan for him day one. And when he's 15 and gets that first job working at the golf course or whatever it might be and has earned income, I will start making contributions to his Roth IRA out of his 529 plan. So this is one of those kind of advanced uses, unique planning ideas where you can really maximize some dollars and help save not just for education, but for a child's future retirement. Another update that I want to make sure that we mention, as we have a lot of folks watching this here in Wisconsin, is number one, Wisconsin did adopt that Roth IRA rollover rule. When you do these rollovers and you're working with somebody on the O'Hare team, they know the process. It's a rollover directly from the 529 plan to the Roth. Do not call your 529 provider and ask them to cut a check to you. You want it to be a direct rollover. Also, Wisconsin increased the tax deduction for 2024, kind of midway through the year in the first, second quarter, up to $5,000 per beneficiary for joint filers. So a nice, easy round number and a pretty healthy tax deduction that gets us competitive with the rest of the country. Also, if you would make a contribution more than $5,000, any excess contributions get carried forward to future years. So if I would put $15,000 in today, I would have 3 years worth of tax deduction. I'd have my 2024, 2025, 2026 tax deduction taken care of, assuming they don't increase that amount, but it is indexed into inflation, and we do see bumps in that every single year historically. So very nice benefits that the state changed. Now let's talk about the tax advantages of the 529 plan and why the IRS created these more than 20 years ago was to create the most tax efficient vehicle to pay for a child's education. So when you make a contribution to the 529 plan, it is with after tax dollars. The money that grows tax deferred, and if it comes out for one of those qualified expenses, the money comes out completely tax and penalty free. Tax deferral, tax deferred growth, like your 401k, your IRA, is a very powerful thing. Not having to pay that tax, that income tax or capital gains tax along the way, really kind of supercharges those dollars that you put in. And then, depending on the state that you live in, you could receive a tax deduction on your contribution as well. So, big tax advantages for 529 plans. Let's talk about what if the money is not used, not needed for education. Always a common question. Again, you always have access to these dollars as the owner. It's your money. You have complete control over the account. But if the money is not used for education, you'll be paying a 10% penalty on the gains portion of that withdrawal, as well as ordinary income tax. Now, when the money comes out of the 529 plan for a non-qualified withdrawal, it comes out what is called pro rata. So it is a combination of the principal, your contribution, and the gains. So if you put in $500 and it grows to $1,000 and you take $500 out, 250 would be gains, 250 would be your cost basis. It's only the gains portion, which is a good thing. We like gains, that means you made money. The gains portion will be subject to that possible 10% penalty and ordinary income tax. But there's a few ways that you can avoid that 10% penalty. Number one would be if the beneficiary gets a scholarship. So little Johnny or little Susie gets a full ride to Madison, great student, great athlete, and gets a $30,000 a year scholarship. You could take out $30,000 per year out of the 529 plan and waive that 10% penalty. Now, if you send the check to yourself as the owner, you will be responsible for the ordinary income tax on that. If you send it to the beneficiary, though, likely in a lower tax bracket, they would be the one that gets the 1099-Q and pays the tax on that. You need to take out the amount of the scholarship every single year. You can't wait 4 years for the student to graduate and then try to take out a big $120,000 withdrawal from the 529 plan. You need to be doing it every single year. Number two, if the beneficiary were to pass away, that would waive the 10% penalty. Number three, disability of the beneficiary. And the IRS uses really gray, vague language to define disability. It's being unable to lead a normal life and unable to make fruitful gains. So if they have a learning disability, an ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, all the way to what we might immediately think about being wheelchair bound, Down syndrome, autism, everything in between can possibly qualify for that 10% disability waiver. So maybe a student just has a learning disability that college wasn't right for, but they're going to go be a small business owner. You could help that child open up their first business, take money out of the 529 plan, the 10% penalty could potentially be waived. And if you send the check to them, it's at their tax rate, which might be pretty small. You still had a very powerful investment that grew tax deferred for all those years and possibly got yourself a tax deduction. Also, 529 plans can now be rolled over to ABLE accounts, which stands for Achieving Better Life Experience. And these are accounts designed for folks that were diagnosed with a disability the way the number is right now prior to the age of 26. An ABLE account can be money in their name without negatively impacting SSI or SSDI payments. And this is another topic that we could save for another webinar that could be an hour long, but 529 plans can be rolled over to those without any 10% penalty. Now, what we traditionally see happen, there's alternatives to a non-qualified withdrawal. Most commonly, we see people just change the beneficiary to a different family member. Now, you can change the beneficiary as often as you want, as many times as you want. It just needs to stay in the original beneficiary's family tree. So my 529 plans for my wife, for my stepdaughter, for my son, we could change it to, swap it back and forth between my son and my stepdaughter. I could change the beneficiary to one of my cousins, to my aunt, uncle, nieces, nephews. I could change the beneficiary to them. Another example is I actually opened up a 529 plan for my best friend Mike for his son 6 years ago when Maverick was born. So if I were going to change the beneficiary on that, it would need to stay in my friend Mike's family tree. I could not bring those dollars back into the Conti family. Or what we see happen a lot as well, you just let the account continue to grow tax deferred until you need to make a decision. So if you're a mom and dad, you're always waiting and hoping for those future grandkids. If there's money left over, you can continue to let that money grow tax deferred, and when that grandchild gets born, change the beneficiary to one of them. Or maybe you have a personal need where you need to take the money out for yourself, but there's no time limits, there's no expiration to a 529 plan. The money can just continue to grow, which is a beautiful thing. Let's talk a little bit about financial aid, because 529 plans are very beneficial for financial aid. We've had some changes to the FAFSA form, the free application for federal student aid. That's what FAFSA stands for, where it used to be a very long, tedious thing that you had to fill out, took several hours, was very intrusive, asked a lot of questions. They have now significantly shortened that down, where you can fill this thing out now in about 45 minutes. Now, the FAFSA looks at two different things and then calculates a financial need. It's taking a look at the cost of attendance. That school that the student decides to go to, how much does it cost to go to? The questions that it asks are going to figure out your expected family contribution. And it's going to look at things like mom and dad, how much do you earn? What do you have in assets besides, some retirement assets? Do you have a second home? Do you have a business? Do you have secondary income? Lots of different things. And different investments are treated differently. In the past, it used to be that if a 529 plan was owned by a non-parent, grandma and grandpa, aunt and uncle, when the monies came out of that 529 plan after 2 years, because the FAFSA has a 2-year look back on your assets and income, it would be counted as income to the child, which is very, very detrimental to financial aid. You want the student to look like they have as little income and as little assets as possible. So under the new FAFSA guidelines, any monies in a non-parental 529 plan, grandma, grandpa, aunt, and uncle, whomever it might be, will not show up on the financial aid form. Monies that are in a mom and dad's 529 plan still receive a very, very favorable treatment, where it's only counted about 5.64% on the financial aid form. So if you have $100,000, mom and dad have $100,000 in the 529 plan, only 5,640 of that is expected to be used for the child's schooling. If the student has meaningful assets, money in the checking account, or shows meaningful income, and we've seen this pop up over the last few years as wages have really increased for some of these high school type jobs, that can be counted nearly 50% on their financial aid form. So mom and dad having $100,000 in a 529 plan looks the same as a student having $12,000 only in a checking account. They will expect roughly 50% of that to be used to pay for that school's tuition, for that cost of attendance. So you want the student to show as little assets and hopefully as little income as possible when it comes time to fill out that financial aid form. Or you want grandma and grandpa to own the 529 plan, or any non-parent, because that will never show up on financial aid. So that's one reason why I always like grandma and grandpa owning their own 529 plan, mom and dad owning their own 529 plan. The other reason, and we think that it doesn't happen, but it happens a lot more often than you think, sometimes grandma and grandpa, aunt and uncle may not think as highly of that student down the road, and they might wish that the dollars just don't go to them. So as the owner of that plan, they don't have to have a conversation with that child or their parent. They can simply change the beneficiary to a different grandchild, a different niece or nephew, whomever it might be, and the student could possibly never know. The parents of the student would never know. I always like the person making the contribution to have complete control over their dollars. You should decide how they get spent. You should decide where they go. And as an added benefit, it could be more beneficial when it comes time for financial aid. And people ask me, like, hey, Dan, our son, daughter, they're in high school or they're 10 years old now. Is it too late to start saving? No, there's really never too late of a time to start saving, never too late of a time to start using the 529 plan. At a minimum, as long as the money is in for at least 365 days, you're going to get a tax deduction on those dollars. If you gotta put the money in on Monday and take it out on Friday, no, it might not make sense. But if it's gonna be in there for more than 365 days, it'll probably make sense to use the 529 plan. And this is similar to a personal example that I have, again, kind of my own house. My son's 5. He'll be transitioning from a Montessori school that he goes to the public school in a year. So we're spending $800 a month roughly on this. So if we just take that $800 a month and instead of buying whatever toy for the family, we just put into his 529 plan. If you put $1,000 a month starting at age 6 and for 12 years, let it grow until they're 18, that'll grow to be more than $210,000, growing at a 6% rate of return. And that's growing tax deferred. I got a tax deduction along the way. If he goes to school, that money is coming out tax and penalty free. Now, $1,000 a month is a meaningful amount of money. I completely understand that. But what about just a little bit? What about $100 a month? Don't go to Starbucks every day. $100 a month. $100 a month starting when that child is a newborn can grow to be $37,000. So $37,000 pay for a year or two of tuition. But when that child's 18 and needs to take out that same $37,000 loan, and this number would actually be higher with current interest rates, they're going to spend more than $13,000 in interest. So $100 a month, or after 18 years, $21,500 contributed will grow to 37. Or their freshman year, they can take out a $37,000 loan. After you pay all the interest, it's going to cost you north of $50,000. So that $100 a month absolutely can go a long way and make a pretty big impact. And let's compare the 529 plan to a couple other options out there. Not quite as popular as they were years ago, as 529 plans have gotten better. 529 plans, there's no income restriction. You can get a lot of money into these. The money comes out tax and penalty free. You can always have control as the owner. The beneficiary can be changed at any time. Things like a Coverdale account, which has low contribution limits, but those were popular because you could pay for private high school with a Coverdale account. Well, the 529 plan, you can now do that. They changed that rule a couple of years ago. UGMA and UTMA accounts, custodial accounts, the joke is we call them you give money away accounts, because once that child hits age of majority, it's their money. They can do whatever they want. You can't dictate that it only gets used for education. So if they want to turn 18 or 21, depending on the state, and go buy a motorcycle, the money that you save for them, they decide that's where it's going to be used. With the 529 plans, the owner always has complete control. So you decide when that money comes out, and hopefully for education. And then just a taxable account, a brokerage account. You have a lot of investment options, which is a fantastic thing, but you're not getting the tax deferred growth. You're going to pay tax along the way. You're not going to be able to change the beneficiary, and the owner may or may not always have control over that. So if you want the money to be used and saved for education, 529 plan, hands down, most efficient vehicle to be used out there. Another benefit to the 529 plans I did not mention earlier is that they can now be used for trade schools and apprenticeships. So not everybody is going to go to a 4-year school or even a 2-year school. Somebody out of high school might want to go become a carpenter, a plumber, an electrician right away, and there's still costs associated with that. You're going to take some classes through the plumbers union. You're going to have tools that you need to buy. You're going to have equipment that you need to buy. That is now a qualified expense with the 529 plan. So really covering pretty much all facets of that post high school life that a young adult is going to have. Comparing 529 plans and trusts, this would be a conversation to have with your advisor that we won't dive too deeply into. But 529 plans really kind of look like mini prepackaged trusts. They avoid all net investment income tax. The owner always has complete control. It's immediately removed from their estate. You have nice investment options. So you can do a lot with the 529 plan to help you from a estate planning tool that any member of the team would be happy to assist you with. And it's not a replacement, it is a complement to what you're currently doing in your estate plan. And then choosing the right 529 plan. We've talked a little bit about this. The most important thing when it comes to choosing the right 529 plan is going to be the state that you, the owner, reside in. So if you live in Wisconsin, you're going to want to use one of the Wisconsin 529 plans because of the tax benefit. That is money in your pocket that is guaranteed that tax deduction. If you live in Illinois, there's a tax benefit. If you live in a state like Minnesota, they allow you to use any 529 plan from any state and receive a Minnesota tax benefit. If you live in a state like a Texas, a Florida that has no state income tax, you're going to want to look for different features and benefits of a 529 plan. Is joint ownership important to you? It may or may not be. What are the investment options? What do the costs look like? So do they have a wide array of investment options? Is it low cost, low expenses? Do they charge any annual account fees? Those are what you're going to want to talk with a member of the O'Hare team about which 529 plan makes the most sense for me and my family. Now, putting it all together, 529 plans, like I said, like retirement, require some planning. Not many families can pay this expense all at once. So it's putting that education savings plan together to go along with your financial plan to hit your goals. So determine your funding needs. I mentioned in my family, we're going to pay 50 to 75% of our child's tuition. Some might want to pay less, some might want to pay more. Figure out what your goals are. And then work from there to determine how much do we need to save? How much of a lump sum do we need to put in to start? You can use a calculator like we have here at Voya on tomorrowscholar.com that will help you create an education savings plan, as well as just work with any member of the O'Hare team, and they'll help you put that together. And then it's just making the decision, selecting which plan is right for you, and getting that account open. So, in closing, again, thank you all for joining me. Thank you to the O'Hare team for having me. This is a group that takes college savings very seriously. It's an important part of all of their clients' plan. So if you have any questions, please reach out to them. And again, thank you for joining me today.
Well, thanks for being here again, Dan. That was very informative. We hope that you all got something valuable out of that. Every situation is different, so we hope that you give us a call, talk through this. We're happy to see how these different strategies could apply to you and your family. Dan, thank you again for your time, and we appreciate you being a resource for us and our clients.
Yeah, thanks again for having me, and thanks for everybody for listening.